Covered now with lands and creases, it is torn in hand. Memories in bits and pieces, traces of.
Hi, my name is Joe Lopiccolo, Assistant Editor of the West End Newsletter, and your host for today's show. Our guest today is Bill Margolin, Executive Director of the West End House, and Hi Escott, a longtime member and member of the Board of Directors of the West End House, which is our subject today. The West End House started many, many years ago in the old West End, and it's located today in the Alston, Brighton area. And it's a Boys and Girls Club today. Can you give us a little brief history about the West End
Sure,
House?
Joe. It began, as you said, many years ago. It began in 1906. And it began through the efforts of a group of boys from the old West End of Boston, which was a real melting pot area, kids who were looking for a place to meet. And many of them were sons of immigrants from Russia, from Poland, from Ireland, from Italy. And they approached a fellow named James Storrow, who lives on these days mainly through the name Storrow Drive. And James Storrow at that time was a very prominent banker, philanthropist, active in the Boy Scout movement, interested in youth, active in the Boston School Committee. And they used to say that he used to be as easy to reach as the North Pole. And they reached him. And he said, I will help you guys out. I will help you boys, and I will have a club for all boys to meet. And through his efforts and through his financial resources, the West End House Boys Club began operation in October of 1906. And it was indeed one of the very first original members of Boys Clubs of America. And it remained in the West End for, about 60-odd years. Countless hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, even into the thousands of boys went through the ranks. They were active in many different types of clubs, organizations, teams. We had top-notch basketball, baseball teams, debating, declamation teams. And eventually what happened, as you yourself know only too well, Joe, is that the city of Boston, in its infinite wisdom, and I use that term somewhat sarcastically, decided that the West End of Boston needed to be refurbished, rehabilitated, renovated. And the people, in effect, were moved out with a vague promise that they could be relocated back into the area, and that, as we know, never happened. So that the West End House, which was not touched by the bulldozers per se, was affected by the fact that there were no more kids left in the area. A membership of 800 to 900 boys went down to perhaps 100 boys. And with that in mind, in October of 1971, we finished the building and officially dedicated the new West End House in, as you say, the Alston, Brighton area of Boston. And interestingly enough, we are now a Boys and Girls Club, as has been a trend with many other clubs throughout the country. There's 1,100 boys clubs, Boys and Girls Clubs throughout the country. We're one of the original charter members, and in 1991 we'll have our gala 85th anniversary celebrations. I think, if I might add, that somebody like Hi Escott, who grew up in the West End of Boston, and can really tell you what was perhaps so special, so unique about that section of Boston growing up.
Well, we all gathered around the area because there wasn't any place to go. We'd be around corners. And then when the West End House opened, we now had a place to go. We were a bunch of fellows that hung together on corners, nothing to do, and when we got to the West End House, they found things for us to do. They got us into declamation corners, essay corners, debating contests. We had musical arrangements. We had the most unique arrangement among people because it wasn't just Jews or Italians per se at one group. We all intermingled. We had the most wonderful arrangement, and we had socials. We had all kinds of get-togethers for everybody. That's what made it so extremely unique. It was a great, wonderful place to grow up in.
And I think more so because of the area, too. The area was a unique area, a real melting pot of people from all cultures and nations.
Sports, that's what played a big part in the West End House. Many fine sports figures come from the West End House. They had basketball and boxing and
we had baseball. We had people who were into track and field. We had quite a number of athletes that came out of the West End of Boston. In fact, there's a Professor Bunny who teaches a course at Boston College on the history of sports in Boston, and he uses our West End House book, which I'll show you later. We have a few pages listed of some of the people who were prominent in the area of sport. But as you mentioned, we have many famous boxers. I think one of the pictures we'll see later, High Diamond, who was a well-known boxer. As I say, quite a number of boxers, track stars, professional baseball players, basketball players, the teams that played the YMHAs and other boys clubs in the area, and won city championships. What about the Saturday night games?
Yes, we used to have people come from New York, the 92nd Street Y in Brooklyn, and from Worcester. They used to come down and play, but we overlooked one thing. We talked about athletes coming out of the West End. We also had judges, people of high repute that came right out of the West End House and the West End.
One person we'd like to, here's a photo of some of the members of the West End House, and there's some famous person in here. Can you point out Leonard Nimoy?
Well, yes, Leonard Nimoy is the one right over here, and he was active in the West End House. He was active particularly in the basketball field, and he was also active in a group called the George Brenner Association, which was named in memory of a fellow named George Brenner, and is still a very active group within the West End House. It's now combined with the Hawks Club. And that's one of the things about the old West End House too, Hi. The West End House had many, many clubs and groups of kids. Hi, you were a member of the Edwards Club, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, and there's the Franklins and the Armstrongs and the Arrow Club, and tremendous people.
And Bill, I'd like to add, we also had Ruth Roman, who's a famous actress, and Buddy Clark, who was a great singer, who were active in the West End House and one of the clubs, the Michael Gidovich Club.
Yeah.
And, okay.
Clubs were very important to us, too.
I wish we had more of that today. Today, the parts of the city is loaded with crime and drugs.
Right.
And if they had more boys and girls clubs that take an active part in the kids' lives today, you wouldn't have the crime.
Yeah. Right.
And unfortunately, Joe, all we hear about in today's news are the bad things that go on in the crime, etc. And there are boys' clubs and boys and girls clubs throughout the nation, usually located as we are in areas where you have a lot of lower-income families, underprivileged kids. There'll never be enough of them. As crowded as our building is, we always see kids out there who aren't being served. But they're good places, just like community schools, community centers, YMCAs. We're all doing our part to literally keep a kid off the street and try to instill good morals and good understanding within them. And we've been doing it for 82 years, and we've done well so far, so we're going to continue.
Great. I can attest to that.
Yes.
One thing that makes the West End House unique is the structure of it. It's the only non-profit, privately run boys club in America.
Well, that's partially true. All boys clubs are private non-profits, but we're unique in many respects. One is that the major part of our funding comes from people who, like you, Joe, and like you, Hi, grew up through the ranks of the West End House, never forgot your beginnings, never forgot your roots, and give it back through donations, through your efforts, through your time, even through something like this today. You give back your efforts there. We do not get any sort of city, state, or federal funding for our operations, and we're not part of United Way, and that part makes us even more unique. We're one of just a handful of clubs throughout the country that is in that particular situation. We do it ourselves. We run a deficit each year. Our Alumni Association has a fundraiser, has an ad book, has a special type of event that will raise funds to help kids as they themselves were helped. And I might add, and I know we'll touch upon it later, also to help support and operate our boys' camp up in Maine. So that's what makes us a unique organization, a large and active alumni association, the oldest and largest of its kind amongst boys' clubs. No type of public support, no type of United Way support, and a dedicated group of people who say, fellas, we're running a deficit, it's time to dig a little bit deeper, to have an extra fundraiser, and to keep it going for these kids of today.
You need more of that today.
Oh, not enough of it, not enough of it.
And Hi, how long have you been associated with the West End House? Give us a little...
64 years.
Imagine that.
10 to 64, 74.
And you started off as a youngster?
A youngster camp. I've gone to camp every year for 64 straight years.
Wow, that is
Now
wonderful.
I'm a member of the Alumni, and we have an Alumni Week at the end of the year, of which I am the chairman of that group. And I get people who come from California, who are originally West End members, who still come back to camp.
That's
so
wonderful.
New York, Florida, Texas, they still come to camp just at Alumni Week.
That's wonderful. What we're going to do now is we're going to get to a film we we recently videotaped at the West End House. And Bill, as it's going on, you could narrate the happenings and explain the pool area and the different activities that are going on at the West End House
Great,
today.
be glad to do it. That's the front of the building. You'll notice on the left the Boys Clubs of America symbol. This is a trophy case. You know, Joe, we've got tons and tons of trophies, and we just don't have the space to exhibit them. There you are, Joe, and there I am. There's one of the plaques to people who have been donors. This is a man whom I mentioned before. This is High Diamond, a well-known boxer in his day. He boxed back in the late 20s, early 30s. A tremendous, tremendous guy who's still around, still active, works for us 2 or 3 days a week in our alumni area within the club. And boy, if you ever want to hear about the old days, that's the guy. This is a club for alumni members, a place for them to go to gather, perhaps to play some cards, relax, go for a swim. And a lot of them is just, as I say, a place to be with one another, to have some recreation. This is a weight room for kids. This young man is one of our older Boys and Girls Club type members. This used to be an office, and basically it wasn't used, and we put some plywood on the floor, some rugs over it, and bought some weights. And we've had for about the last 10 years, we've had this weight room ongoing. When you came into the club, Joe, you came at an earlier hour, so the kids were just starting to gather. But usually there's a good 6 or 7 young men in here and a young man who volunteers as a supervisor. These were names of people who served in the First and Second World Wars. And these are pictures of some of the clubs, just as we saw the George Brenner Club with Leonard Nimoy in it. This is a picture of some of the teams and clubs within the West End House. The swimming pool is a full-size heated swimming pool. It's 25 yards long, 5 lanes wide, heated to about 82 or 83 degrees, which on a cold winter day is certainly just delicious. We do a lot of things in the pool for kids. We have a swim team for them. We offer swimming lessons. We have different types of games. We have water basketball, water polo. And I might add that these kids, Joe, pay maybe $2 or $3 a year for their membership fee, a year, which is not different, too far different than the old days in 1906 or 1910. And everything is included in that price. When they take swimming lessons, that's included. When they're on a swim team, that's included. When they have games or whatever it is, that's included. Interesting enough, you see the blue pool covers in the back, and those are put on at night, and that has saved us each year perhaps $6,000 or $8,000 in our utility bills in terms of heating the water. We also have some time set aside for adults to swim, so that we offer programs these days, not only for kids, which is our major thrust, but we also have some limited time and limited access for adults. So we've become not only just a boys club, or Boys and Girls Club, but also a club that serves some of the community. The very first part of this, where it shows a sign up front, it says for youth and community. And again, we have changed over the years, as have other boys clubs and Boys and Girls Clubs. There's a divider in this pool, by the way, to separate the swimmers from the non-swimmers. The gym is a full-size varsity court. It's got 6 baskets on it. It's in very, very great demand. And again, when these were shot, it was just virtually at opening time as the kids were starting to get out of school and to come in. We are an after-school facility. So before 3 o'clock, we have outside groups of schools or other people who come in here, but our kids come in basically from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock on a Monday through Friday basis, and we have some Saturday hours also. There's a lot of teams that we have that compete in usually the Boys Club League. So one day we'll play Lynn Boys Club, and the next day Waltham, Watertown, Roxbury, Charlestown, Woburn. We'll go up to Salem, New Hampshire. We'll have quite a bit of travel on here. We do some volleyball, we do some soccer, and we do some kickball. And as I've often said, that if we had 3 gyms like this, it wouldn't be enough. This is one of our trustees, Barney Yanofsky. This is the front desk where the kids come in and they check in, where the phone is answered during the afternoon hours. In the background, you can see a little bit of the games room. We've got full-size pool tables, bumper pool, ping pong, foosball. And again, no extra charge, no added charge for anything. This is all included. The kids can play as long as they want. This is, again, opening time. You can tell also that this is a real League of Nations. Just as the old West End of Boston was a real melting pot, this too has children of all nationalities, all religions. This is a group of Indo-Chinese boys. We have recently had a large influx of boys from Brazil, which is something I don't think the Old West End ever had. We have instructors who will teach them how to play, how to do things. This is a small lounge area you'll see off to the left, and we installed a cable TV so the kids to...
Boy, isn't that wonderful.
Oh, it's
what a
great.
wonderful building that is.
Great,
And
yeah.
all kinds of activities going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
What is your membership in the West End House today?
We have approximately 1,000 boys and girls between the ages of 8 to 20, mainly from the Alston, Brighton area, smattering from outside the area, and kids who, as I said at the beginning, it's a place for them to go, and they're literally taken off the streets. And many of them will come back years later and say, you know, if I didn't have the West End House, I might have been in jail now. I don't know where I would have gone for advice. We give out scholarships each year to college. We've helped people further their collegiate careers. And we're really interested in a child and really interested in his or her welfare. And the fruits of the labors have been, again, people like you, Joe, and people like you, Hy, and thousands of people who've gone before you, and countless thousands who will go after you. It's very rewarding.
We're getting close to camp time. Camp is a very, very, very big part of the West End House.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about
Sure.
the camp?
The camp began 2 years after the founding of the Boys and Girls Club. It began in 1908. And people like James Sorrow and the directors Jack Burns and Mitchell Freeman really recognized the need to get kids out of the city and into a camping experience. The camp is in East Parsonsfield, Maine, about 100 miles to the northwest of Boston on the New Hampshire border. We own 160 acres of land, and as we did from 1908 on, a boy goes, and it has remained for boys only, regardless of his ability to pay whatever the charging price is. That's the original camp picture from 1924. We have earlier pictures than that, but there's many of these people who are still around who will come and point themselves out. So this is one of the first junior groups from 1924.
We'll get to it once closer to
And if
today.
you jump about 60 years ahead, this is perhaps almost a similar type setting and a similar location of boys today. Again, as before, from all walks of life, enjoying fresh air, good food. We have modern facilities, modern buildings. We're located on a small pond called Long Pond, and we can really do things to our heart's content. We have counselors also who, for the most part, were campers there themselves. And so there's a real uniqueness about people who, as adults or young adults, come back and help those as they themselves were helped.
Can you, do you have any openings left for this season? Can you
Yes, we
tell us?
do. Yeah, I know it's late, but we can still take some boys for even for a 2-week or 4-week, 6-week or 8-week period. And
How will they get in touch with?
well, I was
with
going to
you?
say if it's appropriate to give the phone
Sure.
number. It's
Fine.
It's
It sure
same
is.
area code 617. It's 787-4044, and just ask for Bill. And if no one's there, just ask for camp information.
Here's another picture.
Yeah, it was actually, interesting enough, it was an informal gathering. It was an indoor board game. And this was taken about 4 or 5 years ago, and interestingly enough that most of these people who were senior campers at that time are now our junior counselors and our counselors at camp. Again, showing them coming in
That's
and
a great
working
picture.
through the ranks.
This is what it's all about.
And that's what it's all about. And that wasn't, believe it or not, if somebody came by and said, can I take a picture? And it really shows a lot of happiness.
We have a great lake there, and here's an old picture of here's a fishing.
That's right. That's from quite a number of years ago, and that's a great catch. And there's still fish up there. There's still some widemouth bass and some freshwater salmon and some pickerel. And the kids go out. We have a fishing clinic usually every year. Somebody comes up and gives it. The lake is very clear and clean and unpolluted, and what a pleasure it is to say that after all you hear about the environmental concerns that we have today. So there's still fish up there. Probably not those same ones, but...
you also have a great sport program up there. The gym up there, the gymnasium is fantastic. Yeah. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, the gym is comparable to the gym that we have in the Boys and Girls Club, Joe. A full court, wooden floor. In fact, we're doing a clinic this year with Carl Fogel from the head basketball coach at Northeastern University. He's going to come up and do a 2-day clinic with us. We're very proud of our sports program there, but I want to stress that sports is one component, a major component of camp. But we do a lot with swimming, canoeing, sailing, water skiing, tennis, archery, nature, hiking, trips, things of that nature. So it's really a good all-around experience where a boy learns to grow, to learn skills, to mature, to learn the whole concept of teamwork and camaraderie and the kinds of benefits that will stand him in good stead as he goes through life. And perhaps comes back for the Old Timers Week at the end of the year and joins you guys to relive his memories.
Hi, tell us a little bit about that, the Old Timers Week. That's unique that you don't find
Well, you'll find people up at camp that are over 80 and close to 90.
When does this happen?
This happens, this year it will be, we have people come to camp for either a week, a weekend, or an extended weekend. It starts at August 20th and ends August 27th. So we have close to 200 people that come to camp. Even the younger people who were originally directors at camp and now are over it, they now join the group. We have a tremendous week, wonderful food.
Alumni Week.
Alumni Week.
Right.
And we have a great, great time.
That's wonderful.
And it is very unique, Joe. There's very few places that do that. So really a homecoming, an annual homecoming.
I look forward to that myself. I set aside that week every year for camp, and I love it. I won't miss it for anything in the world. And the good thing about it is people of all walks of life there, rich, poor, no matter what status. You go up there for a week and you just forget about everything and enjoy yourself. It's really wonderful.
Right.
Here's a book of the West End House. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, in many years ago, actually in the 1930s, Jack Burns, who was then executive director, wrote a history of the West End House. And back in the late 70s and early 80s, we felt that it was time to bring the place up to date, bring the club up to date. And we commissioned the history of the West End House. A young man named Reed Ueda, who was an expert in writing about settlement houses and immigrants, wrote the history of the West End House. And this was published on the occasion of our 75th anniversary and was published in 1981. And really gives a full detailed accounting of the history of the West End House, the story of James Storrow himself, the history of the camp, and brings us right up to date to our move and presence in the Alston, Brighton area. It's available at the club. I'm not here to push it or sell it, but it's available at the club for $10, and it's really quite a monumental work and really tells you all you ever need to know about the West End House.
As you say, as you mentioned, the West End House today is still a melting pot because of all different nationalities because of the area you're in. Can you tell us different types of nationalities?
Sure, yeah. Just one thing I want to say at the outset, Joe, is there's an expression that the more things change, the more they stay the same. And the old West End, which was a melting pot, we're talking 82, 83 years ago, now in the future, 82, 83 years, it's still the same type of situation with a melting pot. The Alston, Brighton area has always been a very great racially mixed area. There are always large numbers of blacks, Hispanics, Chinese, and white people in the area. And then in recent years, there was a large influx of Vietnamese, Cambodian, Laotian children. In the past 3 or 4 years, there was a large influx of Haitian children. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned recently, we had within a period of perhaps 2 or 3 months, we had 30 or 40 young boys and young girls who had recently come over from Brazil sign up. The Latin American children come from all parts of Latin America, and not mainly from Cuba or from Puerto Rico, but from Colombia, Ecuador, all over. So it's a nice kind of feeling to walk into a building, to see everybody there mixing, talking, and playing, regardless of whether they're Catholic or Jew, white or black, mm-hmm. Chinese or Indo-Chinese. It's a tremendous type of experience and very rewarding. And the camp, it also carries over to the camp, too, where you have that sort of situation of a melting pot area. And in camp, it's all the more incumbent upon these kids to cooperate with each other because you're living and mm-hmm. cooperating with this person. So that's what we're all about, and we're delighted to foster such a type of atmosphere and to keep it going.
And one of the things that makes the West End House so unique and so successful is that the people who run it, the board of directors, they started off as youngsters, as I said at the beginning of the show, as members of the West End House. They participated in the sports of it and in debating contests and declaration contests. Then most of them became counselors and gym instructors right. and boxing instructors, and they kept an interest in the club because it was so great. And later on, most of the people who run the club today are people who are members of the board of directors. Can you get into that?
Yeah, most of the board, and again, I point to both of you gentlemen, were active as kids. Some became quite successful, some not successful, but they never forgot what the West End House did. For example, once a month, the Alumni Board of Directors has a meeting, and that's divided into different committees that hear committee reports. There are people who, and it's all volunteer. It's all on their own time. We'll take a trip up to camp. Some of our trustees were up there this past weekend, inspected the camp prior to the arrival of the staff and the kids, the people who are in a particular line of business or have a contact or know something, so that the West End House, when we need something or request something or desire something, invariably there's somebody from the board,
The devoted
some alumni
too.
member who will say, whatever you need is yours. They remembered people like Jack Burns and James Startle, Mitchell Freeman, and Charlie Myrick and others of that type, and said, I want to help the kids of today. And many of them don't live in the Alston-Brighton area, but there's a tremendous loyalty to the organization that helped them so much as kids. And they're there. And they're there for you, and they're there for meetings in cold weather, in hot weather, in tough weather.
Yeah, what are the hours of the West End House?
The kids primarily is a 3 to 9 time period on weekdays and 12 to 6 on Saturdays. Summertime and vacation days, it varies. It's usually a noon to 6 time. Kids are out of school. We found that they're never morning people, but they're always afternoon and early evening people, especially the younger kids. We don't want them hanging around on the streets. So we are an after-school facility during school days and an afternoon facility during non-school days. And we'll do special trips outside the building, whether it's to a zoo or recreational area, to a ball game, to a march, to end hunger, or to help the homeless, or things of that nature. Joe, we're more than an island within the Alston-Brighton area. We're very much part of Alston-Brighton, and we're very much part of Boston, the community, and really I would say New England with our camp in Maine and drawing kids from all over the greater Boston area, from all over New England, and our camp draws kids from the West Coast and from Florida too, just as Alumni would do.
And what's good about it, it's a boys and girls club. What activities do you have for the girls?
Well, girls, we actually do very little to separate the boys and the girls. Things like the swim team are for boys and girls. The weightlifting room is for boys and girls. The games room is for boys and girls. Where we do separate a little bit is things like basketball teams. We have a boys basketball team and a girls basketball team. A library program is obviously co-ed. So we do very little except where some of the teams where we compete in leagues are all boys or all girls, that's where we divide it.
That's what I was going to ask next about the competition. You compete in, throughout the city, do you?
We
With
compete
different-
throughout the, well, I would almost say throughout somewhat of the New England area, mostly as part of the Boys Clubs of America Northeast Regional League. We'll have a 13 and under basketball team, a 16 and under basketball team. We'll have the swim team. We were entered into a soccer tournament or a games room tournament where we will travel to Lynn, Massachusetts, or Salem, New Hampshire, or Waltham, Massachusetts, or Woburn, or Roxbury, or Charlestown, West Roxbury. So we're always involved with other boys clubs and boys and girls clubs in the area, as well as within our own local area, things like a co-ed basketball team that we ran for kids 12 and under.
Great.
Where other competition was the St. Collins Hills Church or some of the local grammar schools.
Boy, you're doing great work, and this has been a real interesting show today, and I hope it's an inspiration of all youngsters out there to get to the West End House or other clubs in the city like the West End House. Get off the street, get to these organizations, participate in sports. That means a lot, and you become better person for it later on in life. And I want to thank you, Bill, for joining us today,
Bill.
and you too, Hi. You've been great guests. And see you at the next West End video newsletter. Thank you for being here today.